What is a workplace? What is a collaborative workplace? And how do you continue it when you grow your company? Today on Culture Builder Live. Hey, I'm Chris Wink, the CEO and co-founder of Technical.ly, the news organization with a community of technology professionals. And I'm joined by Kweli Washington. He's the CEO of Piano. They're 600 plus person digital experience company. I know them from their analytics and personalization work. Kweli, thank you for being here.
Chris, it's awesome to be here. This is, I must say very clearly, the best day of my life.
Wow.
Most exciting experience.
You know, it's happening. We like to make dreams come true, Kweli. And that
so far,
I like the dynamic already. So, all right, when we were talking about what to discuss, collaborative workplace, I think an easy thing for someone to say is like, that's literally every workplace, or like, come on, you're just saying like, this is not that interesting. This is what everyone does. So let's start with, what are we actually talking about? Workplace collaboration. What is a collaborative workplace? I presume we are implying that we think Piano is doing something right in this space. So what are some examples, and what does collaborative workplace mean to you?
Surely. So one of the hallmarks of an organization as it gets larger is that communication becomes increasingly difficult and needs to be pursued with great intention, right? Because the message, it gets distorted. You've got a level of production that happens with people interpreting what you're saying, and as a consequence, things can get a little bit opaque. And so, one of the keys to collaboration, particularly as an organization gets larger, is that you have the scaffolding in place to support effective communication, and you ensure that you are bringing people together in a good way. So we're a company of over 600 people. We're in 13 countries around the world. And so we need to have solid video and audio tools. We need to not have people looking up each other's noses from laptop cameras. We need to ensure that we have sufficient understanding, literally language understanding, where we've got non-native English speakers in our mix. And so the things that we do to support, to facilitate a collaborative work culture are, one, we've invested a whole lot in language learning, right? Where we have people join who are not native English speakers. Those of us who are, make an effort to learn their language. And we've got Russian, we've got Japanese, we've got French. Another is that we really do create workspaces, physical workspaces. Maybe this feels a little retro in the context of a couple-year pandemic, but collaborative workspaces which have the infrastructure to support people working together, whether it's in the office or it's over the miles.
I think those are good examples. The collaboration is a powerful word if it essentially means co-creation, co-authorship. These are phrases that often run alongside collaboration. It's a lot of co-prefixes, I suppose. The office is a good example. We report on some companies in the remote only space that are very prideful of their fully asynchronous work. Some of them are using, video reels and the like to try to create a dynamic. But I have to feel like it's difficult to create collaboration when you're spread across, let's say, 13 countries and 600 people. And we've talked to, corporate clients who real global footprint who similarly have this challenge. So let's zero in on that particular kind of difficulty, because for some viewers who might be on the startup or early stage side, or they might be on the small business side, this might sound strange to them. Like, well, can't you just take all 10 people out to lunch? That changes when it's 600 across 13 people. I imagine there are lessons from challenges you guys face that anyone can learn from. So maybe talk to me a little bit about what has been a challenge. When is things not gone right, and what have you learned from them? And are there lessons that other folks can take from those lessons about how you define collaborative workplace?
Sure. So, Chris, one of the key reasons that we are as international as we are is that we have grown significantly through acquisition, right? We've had just enough ambition, just enough belief in the culture that we operate with, to operate from the idea that we could bring other people in, talented people, software that's additive to what we're doing already, new clients, opportunities to cross-sell and upsell, and do so in a manner that was additive to their experience. So, when we are at our best in acquiring companies, oftentimes outside the US, we are approaching those initial interactions with a level of humility, a level of curiosity, a sense of what we think we do well, but really a basic working idea is, which is we're ready to join you, right? We're ready to meet you where you are and share with you the things that we believe are important, but be open as well to understand and incorporate the things that you think are important, right? So that's a kind of perspective that we have evolved to. In one of our earliest acquisitions, it was a company in Europe. We, for a variety of reasons, did not show up in person with great consistency over the first. We had a little, kind of fanfare right around the closing of the deal, but then didn't have a kind of sustained presence over time. And so, as a result, there was a kind of, a little bit of a growth in sort of perspective there that we didn't care as much, right? We weren't sort of elevating, practices that they cared about or kind of aspects of their business in a way that was represented to them, that we really were present and cared for. We weren't on site. And so in subsequent years, we've been extremely intentional about getting out into the field, right? Getting out and being on location with the companies that we join. And in one way that's obvious, right? But not just in the first, week or month, but in a, kind of setting up a calendar of 6 months to a year of in-person interactions, right? Or saying, look, we're going to have a senior executive on site at all times, right? And making the efforts then to pick up some of the nuances of what the local experience involves and figure out how to elevate that, but also being there to be receptive to any issues that are bubbling up and be responsive and kind of address those quickly. And so, that's something that we learn from and now have a very explicit playbook, which is like, what is our plan for being on site? And I'll use one recent example. In 2020 and 2021, we've had several acquisitions that we've done in Europe, and both our CEO and I, relocated to Europe. We, particularly with COVID travel restrictions, we needed to navigate that and make sure that we could be present, even if there were restrictions against non-European residents visiting the continent. But also just to demonstrate, right? Even if we're not in office, we're in time zone, which makes things a lot easier. Or, we have enough of a commitment here to, be displaced for a bit in order to invest in the coming together of the companies in a way that's positive.
That level of commitment is real and serious, moving executives to a different continent, and lots of global companies manage this in different ways. But I sure think a common theme has typically been what you've alluded to, being on site. We are 2 years into a pretty active rethinking about how much asynchronous or distributed workplaces will play a role. Research predicts that this will not be the majority, but certainly a good chunk of office hours, even in office-based cultures, will be done remotely. Do you think we risk losing collaboration, or do you think that can be maintained even with greater remote work?
I think it's a lot more difficult, Chris. I mean, one of the things that I think underpins collaboration is a sense of who you're interacting with as a person, right? A sense of investment in what that person's experience is inside of work and outside of work. And a lot of that is stuff that you get clearer on through interaction, right? Through the proverbial, water cooler banter, right? Through the, sort of walking out and, picking up the subway at the same time, right? There's a certain degree of understanding the person beyond the parameters of a screen that ends up being really important, right? And even for us historically, where we've had operations all around the world, we've been very deliberate about ensuring that there is exchange between offices, right? It's a way to reward people who are especially effective in their jobs, is to get them to spend 2 weeks in a different office and be feted in a way, right? And so I think that it's going to be difficult for companies that are electing to be entirely remote. We have, I think, chosen a bit of a counter-cyclical approach, which is we've got this beautiful office space here in Philadelphia. We are in the midst of building a flagship operation in New York. We've got several big initiatives underway in Kyiv and in Berlin and in Amsterdam, where we have offices. We have always worked with a broad global reach, and we've always made an investment in an office space, a workspace, a studio, as it were, that people could feel pride in, and a sense of, this is what they mean when they talk about what it means to work at Piano. And so, in the pandemic, we've done things like sent really beautiful gifts, right, to our staff, right, kind of, blotter, kind of leather-bound blotters, or beautiful mugs, or things that are different than the typical swag, to show that we care and that we are thinking about them. Our CEO also did. We were 300 people at the start of the pandemic. Did 300 one-on-one conversations, right? Made a big emphasis to managers and leaders. Look, you've got to just increase the number of touches with individuals and groups over the course of a week in order to replicate some of that experience of like what's going on with this person that you're not going to pick up if in a kind of managed 20-minute call. So all these things are vitally important, and I think that they will play a bigger role as companies do choose to operate in kind of decentralized manner. But at the end of the day, we see office space as one of the greatest levers to influencing the culture of the place, right? We make our efforts to make beautiful spaces that can compete with padding around in socked feet in your home office.
Touch a moment here on how much acquisitions can help or hurt workplace culture, particularly the idea of maintaining a kind of collaborative workplace culture. I imagine through acquisition has been a major part of Piano's growth strategy. Even if you were to acquire a company with perceived great culture, there might just be disjointed elements of it. So how much has that gone into challenging or helping what a workplace looks
I
like?
think inevitably it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that I think a certain portion of the world is interested in, right? If you are curious about the world, then it's not a pain in the rear to get up a few hours earlier than you might to get on a call with Europe, right? Or to stick around a bit later to do a call with Singapore. We are, very intentional about getting people in each of the offices that we have to share different holidays that they celebrate in their countries, to kind of give a sense of what it means to live and work and operate in those environments, whether it be on Slack or it be on the all hands meeting that we do. And so when I think about the type of people that we attract people in Philadelphia and other parts of the U.S. As well as around the world, who do have a certain cosmopolitanism to them, to a certain interest in what the world has to offer, a certain desire to travel or to learn a new language. And so, that comes up in the, one of the things that I tend to highlight on a resume is someone who's had international work experience or studied abroad as an undergrad. I should mention this, Chris, the only hard, fast criterion we have is no jerks, right? We have to sort of, is someone a phone thrower? If they're that, then they're probably going to work at
phone thrower.
So it sort of harkens back to the days I did a few ill-fated internships on a Wall Street trading floor. People were throwing phones. But at the end of the day, once you kind of cross that threshold, you have to have some interest in what the world has to offer. That's the nature of a lot of our clients, right? We work a lot with media companies who are reporting on global affairs, and it's part and parcel of the experience of working at Piano. So, that at the end of the day, that's got to be interesting to a person who comes to work here. And, a lot of people do have a curiosity about the rest of the world and feel excited about it. When we acquire another company, we have to approach it with a basic level of, here's some things that are important to us, but also a, working sense of like, we're approaching this with humility. Like, mostly what we're interested in is figuring out what matters to you and figuring out how to align what we do and what you do, right? And usually people are excited about the opportunity to join a fast-growing company. They sort of like the idea that we're making beautiful, powerful, and useful software. There's a certain, attention to detail, attention to craft that comes across in how we orchestrate our meetings or how we build our workspaces or the welcome gifts that we send. And they find that to be inspiring. And that's been a real source of our success, even as we've joined forces with companies all over the world and grown organically at a rapid pace as well.
We have to go here in a minute. So why don't you send us off? Any tips for influencing or shaping how collaborative a workplace is in the short term? If you were to start somewhere else tomorrow and wanted to inject more collaboration, what would be some smaller tactics to take from day one?
Sure. So, I've cited just a few that are relevant to the way that we work, right? Being present, right? Be it showing up, literally and figuratively. Being interested in what the other organizations or other people around the company are into, whether it's language learning or it's having, kind of hosting social events that speak to their interests outside of work. It's understanding kind of what's going on with people on a level beyond what their kind of work face is. But I'd finish, Chris, with a very kind of simple and personal point of view, right? I tend to be a sort of we and our person, right? And so if I show up to a meeting, I'm thinking about what I'm reporting in terms of we and our, right? A certain kind of orientation towards facilitation, kind of consensus, collaboration, and shining a light on what the collective is accomplishing. And so I think that a lot of a collaborative work culture starts there, right? Not having a sense of being above doing this task or that task, right? Sometimes I joke that my role as chief operations officer has a lot to do with being the chief guy who's wiping up coffee stains on the counter, right? A kind of willingness to take part in whatever it is that we're working on. But I think ultimately it's being intentional about shining a light on the team and celebrating team accomplishments without losing sight of the kind of personal interests, aspirations, and experiences of the individuals as well.
Well said. Kweli, we are at time, so I'll have to leave it there. Kweli Washington, the CEO of Piano, thanks so much for the conversation on what is and how do we do collaborative workplaces a bit better. Kweli, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chris. Wonderful to be with you.
We will see everyone next week on Culture Builder Live. Oops.